it's wonderful to see such a nice group today. We have nice weather. Last time we had horrible weather. Last month it was freezing cold and it was just nasty. So we're just delighted that you're here this morning. This is such an important topic, and we're very grateful to have two very special speakers today. So you have come on a very good day. I do want to mention to you that in April, on the 12th, we are having Dementia Friendly Fort Worth presentation. So if you know folks, in the morning it will be specifically for law enforcement people. So if you have friends who are policemen, work for the sheriff's department, anything like that. And then in the afternoon, it will be for firefighters, EMTs, other first responders, and people who work in emergency rooms. Not necessarily clinical. They might be clinical, but it could also be, you know, the little lady that comes around with her cart and wants to get all your insurance information. Those people, too, need to know about dementia. So it's really some training for everybody. So morning is law enforcement. In the afternoon is first responders. That's in that brochure that's on your table, the little blue brochure. But that's on the 12th. On the 13th is an all-day workshop for anyone, absolutely anyone, family members, care partners, professionals, and anybody. And both days will be presented by Beth Noah, who is a member of Teepa Snow's training team, so she'll be with us for those. Also on the 12th in the evening, she has about an hour and a half session. Oh, thank you. We have brand new flyers on this. Great. We've been excited to get these. I've been waiting for them, so that's terrific. Thank you. On the evening of the 12th, she'll do an hour and a half presentation, and it's for really anybody, care partners, nurses, social workers, people that work in residential care, whatever. So that information, we'll have these flyers. Do we have any of these, Gail? Okay, they have arrived, so that you can get one of these also. Today, this morning, the first half of our program is going to be how to talk to children about dementia. And as you know, we're working with Teepa Snow's organization, Positive Approach to Care, in working through our planning of educating folks about dementia. Last month, we had Lynn Passell, who is ordained clergy, and she spoke with us about faith communities. Wanted to let you know that Lynn has written a book to help children understand dementia, as Teepa talks about it with the gems, sapphires, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, all that. So this book is available for purchase. We will order any that you want. They are $25. And so if you would like for us to order, we will be glad to order those for you from their website. I also have ordering information on the sheet up here if you are interested, but we do need to know how many to order. We didn't want to just order books and then not sell them. We don't want to waste our money. It's not that it would be a waste, but we don't have a lot of money to spend, so we're trying to be careful, trying to be good stewards. So anyway, this is a wonderful book. You'll want to take a look at this today. It's really good, and I'm going to put it on the table back up here. There's a sheet over there, though, if you're interested in purchasing it and having us order. If you want to order, the ordering information is there, but we'll be glad to order for you if you want to pay for it in advance. So, okay, so we are delighted that you're here. I'm not going to talk anymore. We're going to first talk with Mr. Mark, who is the Director of Children's Ministries here. I will just tell you that he is the most phenomenal Director of Children's Ministries I have ever met. My husband's a retired minister, so we've been around a lot of churches for a long time. And he is phenomenal and is really good at explaining things to children. And we do some really neat things here. And I'm just going to brag a minute. But we do, I am, because it's an explanation of why we wanted Mr. Mark to talk. During Holy Week, we will have a Maundy Thursday service and Good Friday service. But we have one that's specifically designed for families and children, helping them understand, helping the children understand. So he did this for Ash Wednesday. So he's really good at helping us understand how to talk to children and communicating with children. So I am very grateful and super excited that Mr. Mark is with us.
Hello, friends. We're going to work from the yellow sheet. So if you have a yellow sheet at your table, or if you're at a table that doesn't have a sheet, maybe someone will be nice enough to loan you one of theirs. I feel like I need to give some disclaimers before I start, just so that no one feels that I hold any undue authority on this particular topic. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not a child psychologist. My training is in music. I was a music education undergraduate, and my graduate degree is in choral and orchestral conducting. And here I am today talking about how to talk with children about dementia. But what I guess I do is some of it's just kind of intuitive. Like there's some people who are really good at taking care of plants. You know, anything I buy at the nursery, it's going to go brown within a week, but some people can just take care of plants. Well, for whatever reason, I can talk to kids about stuff, and I love it, even the hard stuff, maybe especially the hard stuff, and have done a lot of research as I've gotten more interested in it, into best practices. So what we're going to do with the time that I have with you today is we're going to start broad. We're going to start very general, and then as we go, we're going to get a little bit more specific as it relates specifically to talking with children, not to children, at children, with children, about dementia. But so many of the things that would be best practices for children, talking with children about dementia, really they transcend that particular, any difficult, challenging subject, from death of a family member or a pet, divorce, a difficult diagnosis that either the child has received or their mother has received. So many of the ways that we talk with children are the same regardless. So I feel like that we should probably start there, because we're going to encounter all of those experiences at some point, and it's just going to be real important for us to be able to have those kinds of conversations. And then we'll talk about some resources in a minute. People always like to have a book. People like to have a book they can give, or because it feels concrete and it feels real. But the best thing that you can give a child is you and your relationship with that child. So I like to say in children's that children need and want more than rainbows and butterflies. By the way, these notes aren't really for you, they're for me, because every single bullet point here is a rabbit trail that I would love to go down for about an hour. So this is to keep me accountable and on task, because it's in writing. So if I start to veer, just kind of direct me back on track. But as Linda was saying earlier, we do a Maundy Thursday service for children and families, a Good Friday service where we talk about death. We talk about the death of Jesus. These are important things. Kids are curious and kids want to know. So there's very little that we have in children's that's taboo. We want to give them the language to talk about it so they can deal with it. So what can we do for children regardless of what the challenging circumstance is? And the number one thing is listen. We all want to fix it. When we see a child in distress, we want to make it better. It's part of evolutionary biology. We are hardwired to take care of our young. Whenever our young are in distress, we want them to be okay because it's good for the species. So our natural inclination is to fix it, to make it better. The best thing we can do is listen. As my wife would say, Mark, I don't need you to fix it for me. I just need you to listen. Okay. Children are the exact same way. So we listen. Be comfortable with a lot of silence. When I'm working with a child, like with a child and that child's parents or that child's grandparents, and we have a special place on the second floor. It's a prayer center. And I let the children know I'm comfortable with silence. If you just want to sit together for a little bit, they don't have to think of something pithy to say. Sometimes I think we imagine what our encounter with a child is like, and we feel like we've got to live up to some television or movie version where we say the perfect thing, and our child just cries and then gives us a big hug, and we hug it out, and then they're happy. And life is not like that. And so one of the things is giving children the space. I know one of the best pieces of advice to give when you're visiting with someone who is struggling with dementia is give them time to process the things that they need to say. Let's treat children that way. So listen. Now, if you're going to talk about a relative or a friend or a neighbor who has been diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, plan out what you're going to say in advance. Don't do a by the seat of your pants. The from the heart is great, but have an idea about what you're going to say. We'll talk about some of that, some specific things that you're going to say in the end, but don't completely improv it. Be flexible, be open, as we say in children, leave room for the Spirit, and plan it out. And this is have a conversation at a time when you feel you can be calm and measured about it. That doesn't mean don't show emotion. think one of the worst things that we can do is to children is deprive them of our emotions. Kids don't need to see us happy and complete. Kids need to know that it's safe to cry and to be angry, and the best way they're going to know that is when the people that they see who they love are appropriately angry, not crazy, not scary angry, not in an angry way that they're afraid for their own physical well-being or their emotional well-being. But we don't do our kids any favors when we pretend we're infallible, when we pretend that we don't feel things, that things don't affect us. But we do feel those things, and we say, it's okay for you to feel these things too. But have that conversation when you can keep it together enough to do it. You might get choked up a little bit. That's okay. Also, I always advise it's really a good idea not to have a difficult conversation too close to bedtime, because what's going to happen? That child's going to go in his or her room by himself, and they're going to a lot of kids have a hard time going to sleep by themselves anyway, and then you fill a child with those thoughts or those feelings, and they need you there. So have it early enough in the day to where that you can kind of keep an eye on things, to where that child's not alone, or that child can go be alone, but always knowing that you're available. Now, you're available at night too, but you also might want to get some sleep. So do it earlier in the day. I always recommend that. Don't wait till right before bed. Don't do it after dinner. So for a lot of kids, their bedtime is soon after dinner. Do it earlier in the day, maybe an afternoon snack. You just have some nice, warm, comfortable time. And then this one is incredibly important. Be gently honest. When children feel that information is being withheld, they can feel more insecure, or they can start to fill in the blanks with their own ideas. And sometimes those are very, very different than what the reality is. And it's super, super important to be concrete. I'm going to hold up resources little by little. I see a lot of folks in the library here. I'm going to put these books over here on this table, so if y'all want to get ISBNs and stuff. I'm a huge Mr. Rogers fan. So the great ordained Presbyterian minister, Mr. Rogers. Some people don't know he was a Presbyterian minister. His ministry was to his TV audience. He never out loud on TV said the words, "Jesus loves you because you're you," but that's what he was saying every single time. And his philosophy is anything mentionable is manageable. So he uses the real concrete words. When I'm looking for a resource, I'm looking for children, I'm looking for concrete language. I'm using words that are what they are: death and dying, not passed away, not went to sleep, not God needed another angel in heaven, died. That is so important, and kids can handle it. Sometimes we grown-ups can't handle it, and there's that evolutionary biology again. We want to save our children from being stressed, so we soften the language. Well, what that creates is misunderstandings, or the potential for misunderstandings, or went to sleep for a long time. Well, what happens if I go to sleep? Well, I wake up. Mom, did you wake up? Are you asleep? They start to, so you need to use the words that we've got this great gift of language. Use the words. If we start using metaphor and simile, we're going to lose the kids. Well, death is like, dementia is like and as you're going to get in trouble, especially with younger children. It's not that they're not smart. They're great. But that's not where their brain development is yet. They haven't learned to process and transfer. There's a wonderful scene. Has anyone seen the movie A Bug's Life? It's a Disney Pixar movie. And there's this ant. And the ant is trying to explain to the little ant that one day she will grow and she will be successful. And he picks up a rock. And he says, okay, imagine this rock is an acorn. And the little ant, but it's a rock. Yeah. But just imagine that it's an acorn, and you're going to plant the acorn, and one day that acorn's going to grow into a big tree. That rock is going to become a tree. And it's not that she's being a toot. Sometimes kids are, that she cannot make that transfer because the older ant is using metaphor and simile. And we grown-ups, we feel great. We deal in metaphor all the time, especially in the church. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. I am like the shepherd. I am the true vine. And we grown-ups, yes, and we think if we just use this picture or this image to explain this concept, it'll make it easier to understand. Not for children. Children need you to use concrete language. gently, not, gratuitously in your face, but gentle, concrete language. When our bell director and the preschool music teacher, Sandy Rithaller, died about a month ago. And so one of my tasks was to go to the preschool and to go to every classroom and do a little mini memorial service. And it was lovely. And the children, we talked, and some of the parents said, because I'd sent an email about how to talk about it. And before I could even get the words, a kid would say, "Miss Sandy died." And we go, "Yes, that did happen." And we talked about what that means. And it wasn't like they said the word died and then everyone in the room started crying and I got angry emails from all the parents. The kids can handle it. If we do those other things, say it at the right time, find the right concrete language to use. And that's whether we're talking about dementia or a diagnosis or a divorce or hurricanes. I got a lot of questions during this past hurricane season. So one of the things that Mr. Rogers does too is, I'm gonna put this over here, is he makes it safe. So the word sanctuary, I always ask the kids, what does sanctuary mean? Oh, it's the big room with no. The word sanctuary means safe place. That's what sanctuary means. So my job is to create a safe place. And our job is to take the concept of sanctuary beyond the walls of this church building, into our homes, into our interactions, so that we're making a safe place, so that that child can feel whatever feelings that they need to feel, and assure them that whatever their feelings they need to feel are okay. If you need to be sad, be sad. If you need to be angry, it's okay. Sometimes our society sends the message that for girls, you can only be happy or sad, and for boys, you can only be happy or angry. And that those are the only emotions you can show in public. And so creating a safe place to feel whatever you need to feel, and the safety to feel happy or to laugh. You don't have to feel guilty if your granddad just died. You don't have to feel guilty if a joke made you laugh. You don't have to be somber all the time. So, no one needs to judge you and your mourning based on your emotions. You're safe to feel whatever you need to feel. By the way, personally, so when I'm very stressed and I have to tell someone something very stressful, my body's natural response is to giggle and smile. It's incredibly uncomfortable. It looks inappropriate to some people. That's my body's release valve for that emotion. And I don't mean to smile when I'm saying something bad. It just kind of happens. And so people are getting used to me with that. So with those feelings and trying to get to the bottom of feelings and allowing children to express it, it's really hard sometimes when you sit down with a kid, how are you feeling? Well, a 7-year-old may have a really hard time telling you how they're feeling. So it's often better to say, show me how you're feeling. And you can provide paper and crayons. If an older kid wants to write about it. And I wanted to show you something. I'm going to put these here in the center, and I'll just hold up a couple. I got this idea from a good friend of mine, Leanne Hadley. She is a wonderful children's minister. In fact, when I was going to do that whole series of memorial services with 2-year-olds, she's the person I call. She used to be the director of children's ministries at First Methodist in Colorado Springs, and also spent a great deal of time being a chaplain at a children's hospital. Particularly, they would bring her in to visit with terminally ill children. She wrote a whole book on it called Touching Heaven, which you can't read in one sitting because you read a chapter and you're just bawling, and then you have to put it down. But she developed something called Holy Listening Stones. And they're stones with little designs, little simple pictures that don't mean anything, but they kind of hint at something. Like this could be a raindrop. It could be a teardrop. I'll put these in the middle. They're too small to see here. This one could be a tree. So if a child were to kind of hold this and look at it, she might be thinking about how steady she feels and she feels like she's under something that's big and strong. Also kind of looks like a mushroom cloud, doesn't it, after a bomb? And maybe a child could pick this when she's feeling like, oh, I just feel like I'm just going to explode. And so I'll put these right here. And there's not enough time. This could be a whole workshop in and of itself. I'm going to go out of order with the notes. At the bottom of the back page, there's my information, there's my email address, and there's my phone number. So as we're going through all this, and as I told you, you're the best resource for the kids, not a book, not a website, not some kind of object or coping thing you can get. You are their best resource. But I'm available too. You do not have to be a member of this church for me to want to help your child or your grandchild or someone you know. And whether we're dealing with a diagnosis or divorce, and all of these have come up multiple times. One of the things we do is we go into the prayer center, and there's a water fountain, and we have the sound of birds, and there's natural light, and there's plants and nature, and we sit down on the floor, me and the kid, and they're grown up. I have to have a grown up in there with me, and we go through with those holy listening stones. And so what happened? Well, my dad died. Okay, and this is an instance that we had recently. And I said, okay, I want you to show me how you're feeling. And we lay those stones out, and I want you to pick 3 that show how you're feeling. There's one with a heart that's kind of got a little crack down it, and he'll pick, okay, you pick that one first. Tell me about it. And so then he'll tell me, but he's telling me based on what he can show me rather than having to come up, because feelings are very abstract. Remember, we talked about using concrete language. Feelings can be a very abstract concept, but they can look at a picture and they can identify with a picture and show. I'll leave those there where y'all can really take a look at those. And then we pick them. And then we just kind of stay in that place and, yeah, I'm sorry you're going through that. And acknowledge their pain. Don't dismiss their pain. Don't rush through it. Go, as Leanne would say, go deep with them, then bring them out. Well, let's pray about that. Let's pray for God's help through that. And so we go through that process, and I'll continue with that in a second. So older kids can journal. That's a really good thing. And anything they can share with me, whatever they want to share. They can keep things to themselves if they would like to. You don't have to share if you don't want to, because sometimes that allows them to be more emotionally honest. Sometimes if kids feel like they're going to write something and that I'm going to look at it, that they're going to write the gold star answer. The thing that's going to impress Mr. Mark, that's going to make Mark proud of them, rather than the thing they really need to say and really get off their chest. So if what they really need to do is journal something, say horrible things, angry things, yell at God, I say, if you're going to yell at God, that's fine. God can take it. God has heard yelling before. There's a whole book in the Bible called the Psalms, and there are plenty of times where people yell at God. And God's pleased because at least you're going to God with your problems, and that's what God always wants you to do. So that's fine, and then if they want to share it, they can. But I want to at least give them a safe place to feel what they need to feel. I like to assure children that dementia is not, you don't catch it. I mean, I know there were, in the 1800s, there were, certain diseases that might lead to brain, blah, blah, blah. But that's overcomplicating it. They don't even know that. You're not going to catch it. And you'd be surprised how many kids will want to know that. We did a butterfly release out at Lyle Lodge, and one of the girls came running to me, are they poisonous? Are they poisonous? There were, painted lady butterflies. And I'm thinking in my brain, of course they're not poisonous, but I'm being very gentle because with kids, you can't assume that they know these things. So this is a real important point to assure the child that they didn't do anything to cause the dementia. That seems obvious, but it's not. Kids often live in a consequence kind of if this happens, that if then sort of thing. There's actions and consequences. Children can often think that they caused cancer. If I had just been a better child, if I had just cleaned my room, Mom wouldn't have breast cancer. And divorce, what makes that one so nefarious is there have been instances where children have overheard their parents arguing specifically about the child, and the child totally felt like they were responsible for the divorce. Assuring the child that they are not responsible, that they did not cause it. Where it applies to dementia is it's not uncommon for someone to become more irritable or anxious or agitated. That doesn't mean the child caused the agitation. They need to know that Nana's not angry at you. Okay, this is a change that's happening. That you didn't do something that made Nana angry at you, and they need to know that. Assure the child that their needs will be taken care of. This might be something that would be particularly pronounced in a textured, where you've got multi-generations living under one roof, where maybe Nana or Pop is the primary caregiver for the child while mom and dad are at work. And this is a natural fear of childhood. Whenever there's any kind of big stressor, like a divorce or a death, am I going to be okay? Will my needs be taken care of? Assuring the child that their needs will be taken care of is so important. Just to let them know. Once again, that may seem obvious to the grown-ups, but it's not to the child. They need to know it. They need to hear you say the actual words. There are people in this world who are always going to love you and take care of you. I think we all need to be told that anyway, no matter what age we are, but especially kids. Now we start to get into some of the more kind of meta as something that we get to do as a church, and we're going to start to take a lean in towards our faith a little bit. And I like to assure the children that no matter what happens, no matter what changes happen, that love does not get sick, love does not die, love lives forever. And that's whether it's someone who dies or it's someone who gets sick, that love is there. That love for you is there, and your love for them is there. They can feel your love, and that love is not going away. That's incredibly important. Once again, love is that can be abstract, but there are ways that we can understand love. Once again, going back to Mr. Rogers, he would say, look for the helpers. In the midst of 9/11, we can think about the atrocity. We can also see all the paramedics, all the first responders, all the people that were in line to donate blood. That's love, and that love is not going anywhere. That love lives on forever. One way that we can show love is to be there for the caregivers of the child. And this is going to sound obvious too, but people who are the parents of these children can often feel, let's just say, they may not articulate this way, but they might feel stuck. They might, because on the one hand, they're trying to take care of someone who needs help, so maybe a parent who is struggling with dementia, all while they're trying to help their child cope. And so who's right there in the middle? The parent, and so that they can just be exhausted. So we need to make sure that we're there for the direct caregivers of those children, nurturing them as well. Sometimes what will happen is I'm guilty of this. I spend so much time focusing on the child, and then I forget, Mama, how are you doing? What can we do for you? Can we set up a play date where you can just take a nap? Or a nap, that would be like it. Or even just to go grocery shopping without someone else, can we get this, can we get that? Just, it's the little things. Or setting up a meal plan to where, we're not having to worry about, taking care of the kids, getting them to school, then going and taking care of mom, and then coming home and prepping the meal, all these things. And faith communities are wonderful for that. As I mentioned before, when we talked about the holy listening stones, I had a child. He had just lost his dad. His dad had died. He didn't lose his dad. His dad had died. See, it's hard, it's easy to get into that. And so we'd done the holy listening stones. And then I said, okay, let's imagine God helping you through that. I want you to pick 2 more stones that show how you feel when you know that God is there. And he picked one that was kind of that felt happy, but another one was sad, because life isn't all wrapped up in pretty bows. So even when we're praying to God, even when we know God is there, we can still be conflicted and struggle. I said, okay, is there something you want God to know? Is there something you really want to tell God? He said, yeah. I said, you can pray anytime. God's always ready to listen. He goes, yeah. I said, why don't we pray again? And this time, you pray. And so the 7-year-old boy, led Mom, me, and him. We held hands. And that's when he started crying, because he really felt safe, because we were there, we were listening, God was listening, and he was taking the lead. And that just reminded me, I got to make sure that I let the kids I work with take the lead. I don't have to do all this for them. Let them steer it. And it was emotionally authentic. And it was I hesitate to use the word transformational moment, because we'll see that takes time, but it was a special moment. It was a special moment where he felt safe to let his emotions out. His mom had been worried that he was trying to be the man of the house too much, and that was one of the reasons he'd come to visit. and that was the first time he had cried in about a week. Another great thing we can do is tell stories. Tell stories about the loved one who is suffering from dementia. Tell stories from that person's childhood. Tell funny stories. Tell memorable stories. Tell poignant stories, inspirational stories. Tell true stories. Because you know the stories. My grandmother dealt with dementia the entire time I knew her. I didn't know anything other than a woman who sat behind a table and stared. But it was amazing when my Uncle Joe, who was kind of the keeper of the story, would tell me these stories. I'm like, I had no idea. And so that's another way that we keep love alive. We tell the stories. So tell your children the stories. Now, we've kind of gone this direction. This is going to create an arc. So let's turn the page, and oh boy, my time is going by fast. I was like, how am I going to talk for 45 minutes? And now how am I going to shut up in 45 minutes? So anyway, so what can we do? What can children do? We've talked about a few things that we can do for children. Children can do amazing things. And so setting up experiences in ways that children can respond to this is so powerful. Stories. We'll now have the children retell the stories. If a child is going to go visit someone who has dementia, tell a common story. Tell their story. These kids are now, once we tell them the stories, they're the keeper of the stories. They're going to tell the stories that go on. And after I'm gone, my kids are going to know stories about my dad, and they're going to keep his story alive. So keep the story alive there in the moment. Have the children tell the stories. Make a picture book using photos. One of my favorite things to do is have a box, like a shoe box, with different family pictures. And this can work for any situation. It can work for, you fill it with siblings and grandparents and cousins and friends, and you pull out a picture. The kid gets to pull out whatever picture, and you tell a story, and tell a story based on that picture about that person. And it changes, and so you're keeping those stories alive. Now, what's even better than that, because sometimes with someone, you're going to know 10 times more about dementia than I am, but I know that it's often going to be difficult visually, spatially. So a three-dimensional, tactile, safe object is a great way to kind of to have a multi-sensory storytelling experience or a memory. Something safe, for example, my granddad was a hunter. I probably would not have, here's your old hunting knife, Pawpaw. That probably would not be a good idea. But for example, my brother and I played Matchbox cars on our kitchen floor every morning. I close my eyes right now, there's one Matchbox car that I remember. If you put it in my hand, I would know it immediately by the weight of it, by the shape of it. And I could imagine, and those can waken up those beautiful memories. So create a memory box with safe, tactile, three-dimensional things. That's a fun thing for a child to do. It's empowering for a child to do, and it's a great way for that child to minister to a family member, because the children are never too young to learn that love goes all directions. It's not just something that grown-ups heap on kids, but empower those kids to share their love. Learn a favorite song or hymn. And this is so valuable. I want to tell you about a particular kind of experience that this church offers. It's called Christmas Cheer. And in this very room, it's usually the first Sunday in December. And what we do is kids, families, all come in here, and we have this room divided into 4 quadrants. And we give each person a Christmas Carol booklet. And then we divide the quadrant, we send off the quadrants to go on different buses. And each bus goes to a different nursing home or retirement center. And that group of kids and parents and grandparents or whoever sings Christmas carols to residents there. And we've all, I'm sure every person in this room can share an experience they've had where either with a Christmas carol or a hymn, you can be there, you can see someone who you've known for years, they've known you for years. You can tell they're trying to work out what your name is and how they know you. And they can sing every word of In the Garden. Music is so powerful. That's one of the reasons I love teaching our children the old hymns, the old songs, even What a Wonderful World. Over the Rainbow, Bye Bye Blackbird, and learn these songs. Teach the kids so they're keepers of the songs, they're keepers of the stories, and then find an organization like this church where we go and we have those even before a child has a friend or a relative or a parent or a grandparent who is battling through that, so that they can have, so that the parent and the child can have a shared experience, so that if something were to happen to someone who's in their family, they can say, okay, do you remember that time we went Christmas caroling and we were singing and there was someone on the front row and they looked really mad and upset and like they didn't want to be there, and then we sang Silent Night and their lips started moving? Okay, and then and then you're not using like or as or metaphor, you're using a concrete experience that you have together. I just can't say enough about that. Music, by the way, from brain research, there's a psychologist up at Harvard that's developed what's called multiple intelligence theory. It's different ways of being smart. Like some people are visual spatial, some people are great verbally, linguistically, some people are math whizzes. Some people are nature smart, those people that can take care of plants. Some people are physical smart. Like if you've ever watched a football game where the receiver is up in the air, catches something that's going 40 miles an hour, and somehow is able to drag both toes in bounds, that person is a physical genius. They really are. It's a way of being smart. Music is one of the intelligences that's been discovered. It's a way of being smart. There's a part of the brain that's where music is, the right hemisphere. And studies are showing that the musical intelligence is the first one to develop in the body, in the brain. That's why babies respond so well to music. I can walk by a group of toddlers. Hey, everybody. They don't look at me. I start singing Itsy Bitsy Spider. Oh, what's happening? What's happening? And it's the same reason why we have that experience when we're visiting a family member and they may not recognize us, but they can sing Amazing Grace. It's the last intelligence to leave. Music is so important. And sing. And you don't have to be a good singer. No one cares. Just sing. I got to blow through these fast, don't I? Now, a lot of these things are great, just life skills. Make eye contact, which is great. It's a great thing to encourage children to do if they're visiting with a family member or with dementia. But it's a great skill anyway. My mom always, look up when you're talking. Look them in the eye, hun. That's just a life skill. Speak clearly and not too fast. Once again, that's a life skill. I'm starting to need to speak clearly and not too fast. My dad always had to say everything twice. No matter how clearly I said it, he was kind of getting a bead on the words, and then I'd have to say it again so he could, and I'm kind of, I take after him. Be patient and kind. Recognize you may have to say something 2-3 times more than that, and that's okay. Kids are never too young to start learning the value of being patient and kind, and if you've been patient and kind with them through the process, they've got a great model for how to be patient and kind as well. If you're with a situation with a family member, a name tag is okay. If you're going to be out in public with just maybe the first name, just for child safety. But a name tag, appropriate touch, hugs, holding hands, patting hands. Once again, appropriate touch depends on if you're with a family member or if you're out and about visiting other folks. Learn a familiar, this goes back to similar to the song, learn a familiar prayer like the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalm, the King James Version, just the way Jesus said it. That everyone can, and up in the children's wing, we make the kids learn the King James Version of the 23rd Psalm because that's the version they're going to come into contact with. If they go to a funeral for a grandparent, that's probably the version they're going to know. And that might unlock something. So find out what a relative's favorite passage of Scripture is, what's their go-to, and learn it by heart. So, and even when that relative may not be able to say it anymore, you can say it for them. And they can feel that love. They know that you're saying nice words. And just like I said at the very beginning, what we can do for children, listen. Teach our children to be, if our children are comfortable knowing they don't have to compete for our attention, that we're being present and listening, then we're modeling something that they can be, and they can be good listeners. What Does It Mean to Be Present is a wonderful book. I know we're very much in an era right now where everything is right here all the time. Every movie, every TV show, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, you name it, it's right there, email. And so I was going into a staff meeting. I'm just going to pull back the curtain a little bit, and I was late. And I was afraid I was walking in during the prayer. Everybody said was bowed. Well, no, everybody was looking at their phones. Being present's about being in the moment. But, we've had this issue for centuries. It's just one technology replaces another. So this is a great book about teaching children the value of being in the moment with the people that you're present with. So I'll put this over here. It uses concrete language. Okay, so some things to say. And these are just very basic. If once again you've been to any of these workshops or you've got materials, you know some of the facts. I don't want to regurgitate stuff you can look up on the internet on your own. But you can say that dementia is a disease that affects the brain. There are different diseases that affect different parts of the body. Some diseases affect the brain. Dementia is one of those. It can affect someone's memory. And you might want to clarify that this is different than forgetting where you put your soccer cleats or forgetting that's just an occasional forget, that there's a difference, that it's a memory loss that really impacts what you do day to day, your day-to-day stuff, things that you used to be able to do easily. A person with dementia might get confused about where they are, what time it is, what day it is, what year it is. Sometimes they can flip the generations of their family members. When I would go visit my wife's grandmother, she would constantly flipping Nina and her mom and forgetting which generation was which. So just letting them know that can happen and that's okay. And with everything, always lace in, but the love didn't go anywhere. The love is still there. She may call you by your mom's name, but she still loves you. That love is there, and she can feel your love. Always, always, always with love. That's what we do. Someone with dementia may find it difficult to use their words. Kids understand that. Kids get a lot of that. Kids struggle with the right words. They can't come up with they're learning vocabulary words. Kids will get that on a very gut level. A person with dementia may become more agitated, anxious, or irritable. Once again, reminding the child that that's not your fault, that you didn't cause that. And if a person with dementia might forget the names of people they love, but the love is still there, and they can still feel your love. And just because a family member has dementia does not mean that you'll get it too. Older kids will start to question that. Now, there's some studies that show different, once again, y'all are the experts on that. But it's good for them to know that just because my grandmother has it doesn't mean that mom's going to get it, that I'm going to get it. And getting older does not necessarily mean that you're going to get dementia. Oh, well, they're just getting older. I think that's very confusing for children to kind of diminish it like that. So once again, being clear about the language. A couple of other books I wanted to show you. These are really more about death. But we all have to have that conversation with children at some point. One is called Granddad's Prayers of the Earth. It's probably a little bit better for an older kid, but it's emotionally honest. That's the other thing. I look for concrete language that does not use metaphor and simile, and I look for emotional honesty where it's okay to, oh, that's okay, and I just found that I prayed and I got over it and I was better. Give kids the space to be angry or sad for a long time, and this book does it. And then this one's my favorite. Death is Stupid. And stupid is the S word of childhood. When I first said, some kids were like, oh, we can't, well, that's the S word. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's honest. And it talks, half the book is well-intentioned adults saying things to kids to try and make the kids feel better and partly to make the adult feel better, that they made the child feel better, but it not really working because the kid's still really upset. But then in the back, it also has some wonderful suggestions for things to keep the love alive, how to keep the memory of the person who died alive. And that can be making a book, eating what they liked to eat, wearing their clothes, and that's part of it. I talk about with children and with grown-ups about the little deaths along the way. And it's not simply about someone whose body dies. It's when something changes profoundly, and it won't be someone who's suffered an injury and can't return to an activity. A promising relationship that comes to an end can feel like a little death. And someone, a family member being diagnosed with dementia, that relationship's going to change. And for a child and for the grown-ups, that can feel like a little death. And so finding ways to keep the story alive, finding ways to keep the memory of that person alive in their hearts, and remembering the love is so profoundly important. So I'll put this over here. And as my time has come to an end, oh my goodness, I could go, a couple of questions or thoughts. I always tell kids, I reserve the right to say, I don't know, or I'll go find out and I'll come back to you, because I'm not going to pretend I know things I don't.
Anyone have a question? We're recording, so we want to just make sure you have a mic if you want to ask a question.
In your experience, what do you think is, I know there's not a magic time, but a typical time when you talk about the children and the ages and things, where they go from the more concrete to the more abstract?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there are some really differing opinions on that. We used to think, oh, well, by the time they go from elementary to middle school, and what we've learned since then is their brains are totally rewiring in their adolescent, middle school years. And that's why someone who you had as a child who was brilliant, all of a sudden they're like, what happened to your brain? And their brain is going through rewiring process. Actually, one of the debates about, even in our own church, about having kids go through confirmation as sixth graders. I'm like, that may be the most challenging year to have them go through that. There have been some studies that have suggested that really true abstract thought doesn't even happen until, Mike is 18, like into adulthood even. And it's not that they're not smart. They're starting but that abstract thought, like clear transfer, much later than we thought. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't be that they shouldn't come into contact with metaphor. They're going to encounter it in poetry. They're going to encounter symbolism in art, in music, in song. So they need to be conversant in it. But certainly during their elementary ages, that's just really tough. Yeah. And it's tricky, especially in our faith journey, because so much of what we do is parables, analogies, metaphors. And that's why when people say, well, Mark, how you're able to break it down, I'm like, I try to find a way to make it as concrete as possible, and try not to traffic in metaphor as much as possible. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions?
Sorry, that was a real soft answer. Apologize for that. Yeah.
Mr. Mark, thank you so much.
Well,
one more.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I did not have a question. I have a comment, I guess. Finding myself as an adult and a child of a parent who was going through dementia, I would have found this back page very helpful. You have for children, and I agree, this would be wonderful for young children, but also adult children going through it, because it's new information for them. And dealing with a parent, you feel like a child inside because you're always your parent's child. Yeah. And so I think this is wonderful information for all ages. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mark. Everybody calls him Mr. Mark. And I don't know if you noticed the shoes. What color are they today? Blue? He has shoes of every color, and I love it at Christmas time because he wears one red and one green. So, I'm always looking. We sit down there at the front so I can see what color shoes Mr. Mark has on that Sunday. Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate that. Next, we have Melissa Griffin. Where are you, Melissa? There you are. Melissa's with the Alzheimer's Association. Very brief introduction. I met Melissa when she was working in a memory care community last year. And I was doing some work out there, and we were standing in the community out in the kind of the center area where residents can just wander around. And we were just chatting before I was getting ready to start whatever I was going to do. And this lovely lady walked up and said, I need to go west. Now, I have a very literal brain. And so I'm standing there thinking, okay, trying to figure out what to say. And Melissa says, well, how far west do you want to go? You want to go to Colorado or maybe all the way to California? She just jumped right in, and I thought, this is a person who really knows how to be with people who have dementia. I was impressed and fell in love with her then, and now she works with the Alzheimer's Association here in Fort Worth. So we're excited that you're here today, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Linda. That's sweet. Yes, so I can work all day long with people who have dementia and their families, but get me around a group of kids and you'll want to kick me out. That is not my expertise. So thank you for your insight, Mr. Mark. And I liked your point as well. Thank you. Sure. Thank you for your point as well, because so much of what Mr. Mark was talking about actually overlaps with how you would discuss this with friends and families as well. And so I like that point a lot. And so just as Mr. Mark uses the yellow paper to stay on track and watch his time, I have a PowerPoint to do the same because I can just splatter off all day long. So we're going to focus on after someone you love or even yourself has gotten a diagnosis, or maybe you're in the process of testing and getting a diagnosis, how you would talk to friends and family about it. And I want to emphasize that you are going to talk with friends and families, and it is not a topic to avoid. And in my time working in memory care, I saw a lot of kids or grandkids and great-grandkids spend their time with their grandmothers and their great-grandparents. And when you allow kids to do that and to spend that time with your parents or your grandparents as they're going through dementia, you're giving kids the opportunity to be sensitive to someone else's needs that maybe they're not getting in their normal experiences at school or in daycare or whatever. And it's really a beautiful experience to watch kids connect with their grandparents and their great-grandparents. And so anyways, I'm saying that, and it will go along with my presentation. So in the Alzheimer's Association, we have programs designed specifically for people that are in the early stages of this disease. And we have a national council for our early stage support group. And so this is a really great quote I wanted to share with you from the perspective of someone in the early stages with this disease. Be prepared to share your diagnosis with others. Their reactions may cause changes in your relationships, as some people may react out of uncertainty or fear. Being open about your diagnosis with those closest to you and with whom you have shared mutual support can help you come to terms with the diagnosis. So this quote really, I'm going to touch on each point of this as we go along. Here are some things you'd want to consider before having a conversation. One, who are you going to tell? Two, these are really the who, what, where, when. Who do we tell, and what do they need to know? When is the right time? Why are we sharing this specifically with that person? How will they react? And will they know how to react or interact with your loved ones? Because we all know those people that will go up to your mom who has a diagnosis and say, "Remember me, Carol? I was best friends with your daughter when, in 5th grade." And if you've been around someone with dementia long enough, you know that you don't want to ask that person to remember, because very likely they cannot. And so you will have those people in your circle that won't know how to interact very well, and that's okay. Maybe they don't need to interact, or maybe they can learn more about how to interact. And so this is sort of the outline for the presentation. We'll talk more in depth about each point here. And just some tips on having a successful conversation. They really align with the same tips Mr. Mark used in talking with the child. One, do it sooner than later. That's true for mostly everything in life, but if any of you are anything like me, procrastination is a big issue. I definitely struggle with that, but this is not something you want to procrastinate on. And develop a plan. Know who you're going to talk to and what you're going to say and what you really want that person to know before you have that conversation. And yes, just like you wouldn't with a child, you probably don't want to do it before bed or late in the evening or during a stressful time for an adult as well. Take notes about if there's something specific that you want to tell that person. Maybe it's not your daughter, but it's the pastor at your church or your primary care physician. These are other people that you would consider telling. Take notes about, you know how we all get this great idea and sometimes it's at the worst time. And so when it's time to share that idea with the person we want to, we forget about it. That doesn't mean you have dementia. That makes you normal. So write things down when you have that bright idea. I didn't even think I need to tell, the guy who mows our lawn or something like that. And then practice in advance if it's something you're really stressing about telling that particular person. And do it at a time when you and that other person are relaxed. So again, maybe not right before bedtime, maybe not during a stressful time. If your brother-in-law is a CPA and you need to tell him that his brother has dementia, you probably don't want to do it this time of year. Or you do, but maybe it's when he's taken a day or two off of work. So let's really talk about who needs to know. This really, I kind of struggled putting slides together for this because I think each of us are different in who we have in our life. So here are things to consider. There are some people that may just want to share with the closest people in their life, their children and maybe, the people in their immediate family. And there are others that have wider circles. And so we're going to tell those people in the, at the end of the circle that maybe we see once a month or every couple of months. And so you have to decide who you're comfortable with sharing it with. If you see someone once a year and they're not that close to you, maybe it's not someone you want to share it with, but once a year when you do see that person, you do have a very close relationship. You go on a girls' trip once a year. You decide. That's up to you. And if you're not sure about it, you talk to the folks at your church or you talk to some of us at the Alzheimer's Association. We can help you figure that out on an individual level for sure. And then, what is your personal comfort level? Some of us are just really comfortable with sharing our deepest and darkest challenges, emotions, situations that we're dealing with. And others of us are more reserved and have a hard time, and that's okay. Neither one is right or wrong. We all know someone who says a little too much, and we all know some people that don't say enough. And so you may, if it is uncomfortable for you to step out and share that information, you might do it with someone by your side who is very close to you and is a little bit more comfortable having this conversation. It might be your best friend, and she's just really able to support you in that conversation. So consider having a third party, I guess, if it's something that you are uncomfortable with. And then think about those relationships in your life. Who do you spend your time with? Who really needs to know? Who do you feel closest to? And this is important. Who will continue to support me along this journey? And I'm talking about you as the caregiver or you as the person with this disease. So because if you are a caregiver now or you are someone with this disease, you will need support. If you don't need it right now, you will need it along the line. And so consider, who do you have in your life? And I'm not saying someone that's going to be there to watch and be with you 24/7, but someone who's going to hop on a meal train or provide a ride for you when driving becomes a challenge, or someone who's going to run to the grocery store for you once a month. Those kinds of people. Who do you have in your life that can do those small but really big things for you, and allow them to do it? And who are you responsible for telling? So there are other people in your family. Maybe your spouse should tell these people, and you should tell these people, and your adult kid can tell these people, or your pastor, whoever. You can assign other people the responsibility for relaying this information. That's okay. So who should know? Well, the person with this disease and his or her caregivers. Consider, many of you may be in a caregiving situation, and so this seems obvious that you as a possible person with this disease would know, or you as the caregiver will know. But there are many people, and maybe I'm speaking to some of you, who may not have a spouse or may not have someone active in their life as a caregiver role, and they may receive this diagnosis alone and may not share with someone and allow someone to be a caregiver. So that's really what I mean here. And I don't know if I'm speaking to anyone in this crowd, but if you are someone diagnosed, you want to make sure you're going to tell someone who you will appoint as a caregiver in your life. And if you are a caregiver and you suspect, maybe you don't have a diagnosis, but you suspect that your loved one has this disease, be open and honest. And maybe you haven't actually received that diagnosis yet, but you're going to work towards that. And if you need suggestions on that, I'd be glad to visit with you after. Who's involved in your daily life? And I don't literally mean on a daily basis, but your regular life, the people that you speak to on a regular basis and see on a regular, I'm talking about the close people, definitely, hands down, those are the ones you want to know. And even those ones who are intermittently involved, because you may have that group of friends that you see once a year when you do a trip in the mountains together. Well, I tell you what, on your next trip in the mountains together, your loved one with this disease is going to seem a little off to that group of friends you see once a year. And it would be respectful to both parties, especially the person with the diagnosis, when that group of friends is aware of it, because then they know, or they should know, not to react in a way when that person has trouble remembering his or her name or repeats the same story over and over again. So you're taking away stress from the person with this disease and that group of friends. You're giving them the respect to know how to interact better and not worry when they see some of these symptoms themselves. And maybe there's only really one symptom showing right now, but you would want them to have that opportunity. If applicable, supervisors and coworkers, folks, people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who are still working are getting this disease as well. So that's, I guess maybe I'm speaking to that group of people here, but if you are still a working person or you have an active volunteer role or active responsibilities within a club or organization, those are people you would want to know, because this disease will affect responsibilities within that organization or that workplace. And definitely any advisors you have in your life for legal matters, financial matters, and medical matters. Because if the person with this disease, we know one of the first symptoms is issues with making decisions and judgment. Those are happening in our front lobe, and our front lobe is being affected with this disease. And so sometimes you may see someone, I've seen this many times, someone who will go to the bank and withdraw $40,000 and give it to a neighbor. You would want that bank teller or the person overseeing your account to be aware of this, to prevent that from happening. And same with, of course, you would, if it's a chiropractor, if it's a dentist, and you think those people are irrelevant to really knowing about this diagnosis, they aren't, because your loved one who is getting a dental procedure done may have a reaction, a behavioral reaction while getting that procedure done. Well, that dentist or that dental hygienist should be aware of that, so they can be more sensitive. I'm not saying they all will have the best training on what to do, but at least you're providing them the opportunity to know. And then, the rest is up to you. Who else is in your social circle? Who else do you see that you would want to know? And you won't have the answers today. It's just something to think about. And then what do they need to know? They don't need to know all the little details. So you're just sharing what you're comfortable with sharing. If you want to lay into every detail and every symptom and every step of the way, when you got testing and received a diagnosis, you go right ahead. If you just want to say, hey, Miss Jackie, I just want you to know my husband was diagnosed with dementia. I'm not ready to talk about it today, but I want you to know that I do want to talk about it later, and this is all I can say today. That's okay. Take it in steps. What is important for each person to know? You don't need to tell your pastor every little thing, or maybe you do. You don't need to tell the neighbor down the street all the little details with issues that are going on in your house, or maybe you do. Again, that's up to you and your assessment, and if you're not sure, you confide in someone you're close with, or someone that a professional that you can talk to about just really what you want to say and who should know what. I'd be glad to have further conversation about that as well, but this is just really a personal decision here. And then when is the right time? Sooner, always. This is an issue with many things in life. And one way that we see it at the Alzheimer's Association, we have a 24-hour helpline. So anyone can call us day or night, or you can walk into our office during business hours in the middle of a crisis and you don't know what to do, and we can consult with you about that for free. You just call us or come in and we'll talk to you. And 9 times out of 10, we are meeting people that are in a crisis. And we have never met them before this crisis occurred. Well, I'll tell you what, I hope I'm not shocking anyone when I say, if you're living with this disease, either as a caregiver or a person with it, there will be a crisis. And if something hasn't been that hard yet, that will be there down the line. And so the more involved you are earlier, the better prepared you are during that crisis. And so the same is true when you're telling people in your life, because that crisis could happen when your diagnosed loved one is out playing golf with his buddies and they did not know that he had this diagnosis. So the sooner the better, but again, not rushed. Don't want you all to leave here and just blast it on your social media pages or your email or whatever and tell everyone. You would, want to think that through. But definitely when you realize that the symptoms are affecting daily interactions and daily responsibilities and those relationships that are, kind of daily relationships for that person with this disease, definitely. You don't want to leave either party in the dust on that. And then this goes right into the first bullet point. Before you need their help and before that crisis occurred, because you will need their help and a crisis is likely to occur. But it will be much less of a crisis when you've prepared for it already. And then again, in a situation where you're both alone and relaxed, and it's up to you if the person with this disease is going to be in on that conversation. Again, that's something to think about on a personal level and with that person. Maybe the person you're telling is your best friend and really doesn't have a great relationship with the person who has the diagnosis. So you're not going to involve him or her, but maybe it's a relationship where all 3 of you are equally close and it is something you can have together. And okay, so now I'm telling you all that you need to be open and honest with the people you love and the people who are a part of your regular life, but why? For a few reasons. Again, I hope I'm not shocking anyone when I say that this disease is progressive. You're all here, so I'm assuming we have some shared knowledge about this disease. It is progressive, and things will likely get worse. And so you will need support. I said that already, but I'll say it again. You will need support, and these are the people who can provide your support. And too many times, we as professionals that work with caregivers and families work with people who think they don't have a support system because they don't have many friends and their kids live in Washington State and Colorado and X, Y, and Z. And then the more we talk to that person, we find out, no, you do have very good people in your life. You're just not asking them for help. We're human beings. We're prideful, and we don't like to do it. But it's okay to do it, and you're going to want to do it for your health and benefit and for your loved one's health and benefit. If you don't tell the people that are in your circle that you communicate with on a regular basis and see on a regular basis, then you may not be coping with it yourself. And you may not be allowing yourself to feel those feelings, like Mr. Mark taught us about allowing kids to feel their authentic feelings and express their authentic feelings and not give them false names. The same is true in this situation. If you're not able to talk about it, or your loved one's not able to talk about it, and your friends and your family aren't able to understand it, then we are preventing this authenticity from happening, and we may be burying it ourselves. My family lived in denial for 3 or 4 years before we allowed my grandmother to actually be tested and get a diagnosis. And when I think about it, I try not to think too hard, but we prevented my grandmother from living her best years in that time because we were in denial of it. And I hate to see more people do that. And you may open up that relationship to be stronger than it was before, because there are people that are naturals when it comes to being there for you in a crisis, or they're a natural when it comes to communicating and working with someone who has this disease and the challenges that go along with it. And so you're opening up, you're saying to that friend, I trust you to be there for me, and you're giving that relationship the opportunity to grow. Now, with that said, some relationships may do the opposite, and I've seen that before, and I do want to say not everything is fluffy white clouds and butterflies. There are some relationships that can struggle through this, and those may be the ones you don't want to continue nourishing as a caregiver as well, because your energy is going to become increasingly important. And so reactions, because there's a lot of them. It's normal. It's okay to feel uncertain or to feel fearful before having this conversation, while having this conversation, and after you've had this conversation. And again, this doesn't have to be one conversation. It can be, listen, I want to tell you my husband was diagnosed, and I want to talk to you more about it, and I know that you'll be there for me, but that's all I can say today. Can we talk again in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or when I'm ready? That's okay. I want to emphasize that point. But through your feelings, through this situation, you have the opportunity to educate your friends and engage them, and engage their support for you. And so all the same feelings you have as the caregiver or as the person with the diagnosis, fear, anxiety, confusion, denial, anger, misconceptions about what this disease actually is, those people are feeling the same way. Or this statement, and maybe some of you have heard it, but he seems so fine. That can't be. He doesn't seem, no. That's okay. That reaction may come, and it will be easy to get defensive to that. But just have this understanding that these reactions exist, and they're the same ones you and your loved one may have felt or still feel before receiving the diagnosis and after that. And then interactions, I know I'm working on 10 minutes left here. Like I said, some people are natural. Some people just walk right in and can go with the flow, just like Mr. Mark can get on the same level with the children. There are people that can just jump right into a group of folks with issues relating to dementia, and they're a natural. And then there are other people that think too literally, and Linda may point herself out there, and that's okay, because that does not mean that those people don't have strengths and support to offer you. So just understand there are some that just like, I'm not that great with kids, I'll be honest, but put me in a group of people who have dementia and you'll see the best out of me. But that's not everyone. So play to their strengths. Be patient. If you feel exhausted by the task, slow down. Rome wasn't built in a day. This journey you're on is a long one. So nothing needs to be done overwhelmed. And if a friend just won't get it or shuts down and really closes that relationship off because they don't know how to, for whatever reasons, I won't, come up with their own reasons. You don't have to force the issue. You don't have to force it on them. You can be patient. A friend may close the door for a few months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then come back around later. You never know, but don't overexhaust yourself with getting everyone to understand what's going on and what they need to know. And so one issue some people have is they don't know how to talk to the person with this disease. Well, it doesn't have to change. I just told you today that he was diagnosed 2 weeks ago. And at that point, probably not a whole lot has changed in the way that he or she is interacting with other people. And so there are some people that may start talking like they talk to a child, or suggesting doing things together that may be childlike. And that person is probably doing the best that he or she can do, but you can be open and honest with that person about what is the person's true challenges right now. He can still play golf. She can still go to Bible study on Wednesday, but maybe she can't follow along as well as she used to, or things like that. So be honest when the abilities have changed, because what you don't want is the person with this disease to be spending time with someone he or she loves, and they played bridge together for 30 years, but you know what? She can't play bridge anymore. So you may not want her to go play bridge anymore, because she may feel embarrassed. She may feel shame. She's aware that she can't play as well as she used to, and so maybe there's a modified version that we can play with, but it's probably not going to that group of 16 ladies where they have 4 different tables playing bridge, because some of those ladies may get snarky and impatient with her as well, and we don't want that to happen. So just, you want to protect those situations. And then here's just some extra tips that I found from people that are in our early stage support group and that serve on our national council for the early stage group. So these are the people living with the disease. They said, go slowly, talk slowly, whether it's with me or with other people around me. And I don't literally mean talk really slowly because they can't understand. Just talk slowly in a way that is not forcing the subject, that is delicate and honest and open, not a literal slowly because you think they can't understand what you're saying. I just want to clarify that. And let them know that there are all these different reactions. I kind of talked about what some of those reactions are. So tell them that. Tell them that you understand, maybe you're feeling fear and anxiety and someone else is feeling relief because you thought something was wrong and now you have a diagnosis that verifies that something is wrong and you have a reason for what's going on. So just be aware of those different reactions and you can talk about it. Provide education materials. Tell them about these programs that you're going to at First United Methodist Church. Talk to them about the programs that the Alzheimer's Association puts on. Invite them to attend. Allow them to educate themselves. Again, don't exhaust yourself. Don't force the issue, but just say, hey, I know that you want to be there for me. I don't really know how you can be there for me yet, but I want you to know there's a great series going on downtown at the First United Methodist Church, and the Alzheimer's Association has support groups and has education programs. And if you can attend some of those things, you may have a better understanding of how to help me, because I don't know now, because I'm overwhelmed now, because I really don't know what tomorrow holds. But if you can help me understand that, that's the best you can do for me. And let them know you are still you. I mean this from the perspective as the caregiver and the person with this disease, because your lives are changing, but you are still you, and your values and the way you've lived your life and the things you like to do and the people you love, none of that is changing. So you're still that person. And this, I think I added this in there so I could preach it from the mountaintops. Let people help. That's the best thing you can do. Let people provide that assistance, because it will make your life easier, whether you are the person with the disease or the caregiver. And just emphasizing again, you can't do it all alone, and so you need to provide a support group of people around you, whether it's medical professionals, whether it's having a legal professional in your corner or a financial professional in your corner, whether it's family members in your corner or friends down the street or members from your church. Those people are going to be the ones to help you when you need it. And so the earlier you can have those conversations, the more empowerment you're giving to them. Because how many people, if I was your good friend and I said, good friend, my spouse just was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, I bet each and every one of you would think right away, how can I help this person? How can I be there for them along this journey? But so many of us, when we're in that position and we have to tell someone we love that our spouse has the disease, we may not ask for that help. But as the friend, we would want our friend to ask us for help. And so the point is, and I've probably said it 6 times throughout this presentation, ask for that help. And then I'm ending with an invitation to our spring symposium, Alzheimer's Association Spring Symposium. We are very proud to have Martin Schreiber, who's the former governor of Wisconsin, as one of our keynote speakers. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is not a ploy to get you all to come. But if you like this topic and you want to learn more about it, his focus is going to be on living, surviving, and coping as an Alzheimer's caregiver. So he wrote a book called My 2 Elaines because his wife has Alzheimer's disease. And so he's going to talk about the entire journey that he's had caregiving and coping and surviving as a caregiver. And I guarantee he's going to talk about how you utilize other people in your corner and in your circle along that journey, because he's not doing it all alone. So I'm inviting you all to attend. It's March 22nd at the Arlington Convention Center. It is a full-day event from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. We have flyers on this table and brochures at the Alzheimer's Association table, and feel free to grab them. We do ask that you register in advance. If you are a family caregiver, it is free, whether you're a past family caregiver or a current family caregiver. It's free for you, and so I invite you all to attend. And if you can't be there the whole day, you don't have to. It's not, you have to be there by 8:30 and you have to stay till 4:30. You can literally come hear his presentation. The flyers that I have on the purple Alzheimer's Association table has a agenda of all the different presentations. So I invite you to grab one of those, and you can select from it. So, and again, Alzheimer's Association, we are here to help. One thing, we do a lot of things, but one more thing I want to tell you we can have family meetings. So if you family dynamics are so interesting. Some of us have great family dynamics, and others of us have kids who don't help, and then kids who do everything, overdo maybe. And so, with this disease, we always see dynamics that are not perfect. And so one thing we can do, you can come in our office, you can call us and make an appointment, and we can have a meeting with you and a few of your families and, kind of talk through what's going on and help everyone see it from someone else's perspective and help you gain access to resources that can help along this journey and figure out what your next steps are. So that's one thing we can do, free of charge. Call us. We have a 24-hour helpline, and every piece of material we have on that table has the number on it. So I just want to make sure you all are aware. If this is something, this topic that we talked about is something you're really struggling with, allow us to help you on a more personal level. I struggled to really create a PowerPoint for it because it is a conversation that we can have on a personal level. So I invite you all to utilize that as well. And I think we may have a minute or two left for questions. I have the microphone, don't I?
My mom died 8 years ago today of Alzheimer's, and so I'm here just to kind of be helpful to other people. But I have a huge question because I teach a class called Faithfully Fit Forever at my church. I teach Faithfully Fit at my church. I'm one of the teachers, and one of our teachers has a wife that comes that has Alzheimer's, and it's real obvious to everybody and becoming more so. But even his very best friends say that he will not ask for help or discuss it. So we've all been kind of wondering, what do we do? Is that something that we just sit back and it has to be time for him? Or is there, do you have an intervention like, what do you do?
Well, what do we do? You can have an open and honest conversation with that teacher, with that caregiver, and just with love, and again, in a comfortable environment, and probably not in a way that to make him feel bombarded, with 5 or 6 of you. But here's the other thing. People have to want the help. And there's only so far we can go as a loved one on the outside. All you can do is your best, and encouraging with an open and honest and loving heart, and sharing maybe a specific resource. Hey, there's this class coming up at the church, or there's this program that the Alzheimer's Association is hosting, and maybe you can offer help. I'll be glad to stay with your wife if you want to attend this group. Something specific, but if that's not working, there's only so much you can do. I mean, we say it when someone may have an addiction or something. Sometimes you have to let them hit rock bottom before they get that help. And the same is, sorry to make that comparison, but we're human beings, so we all relate in that way. Sometimes it has to get worse for someone to say, okay, I need the help. And so the best you can do is not give up, but not force it, I guess. It is delicate, and especially, it's a generational thing too, and especially a man does not, my grandfather was the same way too. He ended up getting himself a heart attack and cancer and diabetes along his journey caring for my so there are some things that are unfortunately normal, but I think you're doing the right thing by trying. But again, like I said, don't overexhaust yourself either. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I lost my voice. I'm thinking about how you address the person with the dementia, because it's been diagnosed, but I've had instances. My husband also has aphasia, and for instance, we'll go to a a store where he needs to get something, and he wants to talk to the person himself, but he's not doing a very good job, and I'll try to help him. And he say, "Oh, shut up." Very rude to me. And so you sort of be embarrassed in front of the person that is helping you in the store. So how do you deal with that?
Well, I wish I brought them. I have these little cards. I'd love to get your information and I'll send them to you. But they look like a business card, and they just very discreetly say, the person I am with has dementia. He or she may show some issues with communicating and may display some things that confuse you, but I want you to be aware that this is going on. Please be patient with my loved one. I'm not quoting that verbatim, but something to that point, and I would love to get you some, because this is, so don't leave without talking to me individually, but it is, you may not be able to stop your husband from doing that, and not everyone out there understands how to react. That's why we're doing Dementia Friendly Fort Worth, to help more people in grocery stores and in banks and in restaurants get an understanding for this and to recognize it, because you cannot control your husband's behavior, but you also don't want to stop him from maybe enjoying something like going to a grocery store or a restaurant. And so you are in between a rock and a hard place on that one, but I would love to get you this a stack of them, and anyone else who wants them. I don't know why I didn't bring them today, but we do have them, and maybe in that moment you have your husband turns away, and you can just say to that clerk, my husband has dementia, be patient. But you wouldn't want him to hear that, because I'm sure his reaction would be, oh, shut up. But if there is a way to discreetly say to that person that you're working with, be patient, he has dementia, I think that's the best thing you can do. I hope that helps. I won't answer any questions. If I don't know, like Mr. Mark said, I'll say I don't know. But the issue with this disease is nothing's black and white, and there's never a solid right answer. But hopefully some suggestions will help, and I will get you those cards.
Anyone else?
I just want to put in a plug for the symposium. My husband and I attended Alzheimer's classes, symposiums for years.
Good.
I tell people, tell your kids, take a day off. Take your personal day and go, so that you get educated. It makes so much to know the things that are being presented. So take that personal day and go.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love saying that these programs are not designed just for people who are living with this experience now, but statistics show us that if you've never had to deal with this before, you will have to one day. And so if you have those people, thank you. Your kids, neighbors, that even if they're not a caregiver, just having this knowledge in your back pocket is a benefit. So, and if anyone has time, there's little surveys on the tables that's called Dementia Conversations. We use this information. We are a nonprofit agency, and so we're funded privately by donors and grants, and so we answer to them and help them understand what we're doing and who we're educating, and so we like to show them the quality of what we do. And if you wouldn't mind taking a few 30 seconds, 60 seconds to complete that, we would really appreciate it.
Anyone else?
Yes, right here.
I'd just like to give a testimonial to all the Alzheimer's Association has done for my husband and me. We connected with you guys after his diagnosis in Fort Worth, and got into the Bedford Early Stage Support Group. And it was a lifesaver for us. We didn't have a lot of friends or support people, and they became like family to us. And several of them were male caregivers, and some of them joined about the same time we did. And it took them some adjusting time, but they really bought into it and what it did for them. Good. And so she might try to push that gentleman into looking into a support group.
Okay, good. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Melissa, thank you. You are awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thanks. Well, thank you all for coming. Pick up the brochures that are on the table. They have the schedule of events that are coming up. I remind you one more time that Tifa Snow will be here September 7th. So mark your calendar now. That is just an awesome opportunity to hear one of the leading dementia educators in our country. If you did not sign in when you came, would you please see Gail in the red blouse so that we can know that you were here, and also that we can communicate with you about programs to come. If no one else has anything, we're done for today. One more thing. We repeat the same session at 5:30, so if you have family or friends that you would like to encourage to come at 5:30 this evening, please do that. Thank you very much.